Hello, students and families. 2 weeks from today, which is Monday, March 15th, we will begin our all-in mode of instruction, which is going to be very different than anything that we've had so far this year. So in this video, I'm going to talk about our schedule, both our daily and our monthly schedules, address some concerns that were brought to me, and talk about some other information. First off, I realize that having everyone in the building at the same time is very anxiety-inducing for many of us. I totally understand. I get it. We're doing everything we can to keep everyone as far apart from each other as humanly possible. For example, in areas that have tables, instead of sitting 2 students at a table, which was going to have people pretty close together, we've ordered a lot of small individual desks, which is going to help us get closer to that 3-foot mark, which is really our goal. Not every room that has tables will now have desks. In some rooms, the tables are larger than others, science, for example. And in other areas, it wasn't going to make much difference. But in most places, you are now going to see desks where we saw tables before. Another concern I heard a lot about this week is workload. Students, I know you're concerned about the increased workload, and I would be too. I understand. It's going to be a big shift. We haven't had a full day of school for a year now. And so it's going to be a shift. And while the workload isn't necessarily going to increase in most areas, it's going to feel that way because the time to complete things is going to be condensed. Right now, for example, if you have math on Monday, you don't have math again until Wednesday. And so you have that extra day to complete projects and assignments and study for tests. Now you're going to have math every day. So the work is going to be condensed. I think one of the most important things that we're all going to have to do when we go back to all in is sharpen our time management skills, because it's going to be an adjustment. But your teachers know it's going to be an adjustment. And I know that you've been talking with them. One of the reasons I've heard so much about this is because they told me that you've been talking with them, which is great. I'm glad that you trust your teachers enough to have those conversations, to let them know that that is a concern of yours. And I know they're going to ease you into it. But yes, it's going to be an adjustment. But we'll get there together, we'll get there. And we do have supports in place for students who are having a difficult time. Last week, I sent an email asking for 2 things. One, if you're considering moving to Florida virtual for the 4th quarter, I need an email by March 4th so that we can get that set up for you. The second thing is lunch. And so lunch is going to look a little bit different than what we're used to. At the high school, we're used to students in grades 9 through 12 just deciding whether or not they want to stay on a given day. And that's great. That system works out really well. And as soon as we don't have to distance any longer, we can go back to that system. But for now, since we have to keep students 6 feet apart during lunch because they're unmasked, they have to be 6 feet apart and stationary. We need a commitment from each student whether they are going to leave or stay each day. If you're going to stay, that's fine. But we need to have a spot for you, probably in the gym with tables set up. I wish we could pick whether we're going to stay or leave each day, depending on the weather, depending on what's going on, what your friends are doing. But for the rest of this year, we just won't be able to do that. So if you're going to leave for lunch, there's nothing that you need to do. You can just leave every day, it's fine. If you're going to stay for lunch and you haven't already done so, I need an email from you indicating that so that we can make sure there's a spot for you. If you are going to stay for a club or get support from a teacher, that, regardless of which one you choose, whether you're leaving or staying, that doesn't matter. You can still stay and work with a teacher or stay for a club on a given day. That can be different day to day. You just can't stay and eat lunch in the cafeteria or the gym if you haven't reserved a spot to do so. If you have any questions about that, please let me know, because I know this is very different. This is a shift. I wish we didn't have to do it this way. But for the rest of the year, we're really not going to have a choice. There are still going to be grab-and-go lunches, which I'm told will include breakfast for the next day too. I know our cafeteria folks are working really hard to make sure that you have everything that we can provide given all the restrictions that we have from COVID. And so I think we're going to start including some hot lunches that are grab and go. Those will continue to be free the rest of the school year like they have been. And it'll include a breakfast for the next day. So there's something positive. There are a couple of other logistical concerns that have come up, or I know will come up. The first one being one-way hallways. And so I get this question a lot because back in the summer, you heard a lot about students, even in hybrid, making sure that students are either going one direction. So making sure that hallways and stairways are stairways are only either up or down, not both, or hallways are one-way hallways. And in large, crowded high schools, that makes a lot of sense. And it made a lot of sense to us too, until we actually mapped it out and started doing it in the summer and seeing what it would look like. And given our size, given the fact that our halls aren't crowded, especially not using lockers this year, it actually put more kids in the hall, more people in the hall if it was one way versus if it wasn't, just because of our size. So for example, if you have Mr. Evans first period and Mr. Peters second, well, those classrooms are pretty close together. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to go from Mr. Evans' room and walk past Mrs. Whelan's room and past the media center and then down the language arts hallway and then down towards Mr. Peters' room. It didn't make sense. It puts more kids in the hall. So for us, that's not something that's going to help us. It would actually hurt us if we did that. The other question I keep getting is study hall. Yes, students in grades 9 through 12 are encouraged to still leave for study hall because that's less people in the building in a given period. Unless you're staying to get support, you want to stay, yes, you can stay. We're not throwing you out. Or if you've been asked to stay based on maybe some missing assignments or grades. But otherwise, we encourage you to leave for study hall. And you can just walk out the nearest exit and come back. That's worked really well. Students, you're doing a great job with that. You're really, the independence that you've been given this year, some of it's out of necessity, but you've been given a lot of independence and you're doing a great job. You're coming back on time, you're being responsible. So thank you. I'm really proud of you for making this work. Okay, schedules. So I'm about to show you 3 different things, which are all attached to this email. The first, and I'm gonna put it up now, is the monthly schedule. So March, April, May, what the schedule looks like. Most days we're going to try to keep the schedule the same, periods 1 through 8. We do have block days this year, and the only reason we have blocks at all this year is because we still have state testing. And so on days where there's state testing in Language Arts 2, Algebra 1, Biology, US History, or Government, and if you're in one of those classes, your teachers will have more information for you. But those need to be taken over about a 90-minute block of time. And so those will be taken in your classes, which means we'll run block schedules those days. You'll see both the block and the non-block schedule weeks here in a second. Okay, over my shoulder here is the non-block schedule. So we kept the current structure of the schedule the same, including the hour lunch, but now instead of having half your classes, it is periods 1 through 8. This is our block schedule. I hope I put those up correctly so that it matches what I'm saying, because I have to do it afterwards. This is our block schedule. And so most of the time when we have blocks, they're on Tuesday and Wednesday. However, because of the way the state testing windows fall, sometimes they're gonna be maybe Wednesday or Thursday. And at the end of April, there is a week where we have 4 days of blocks, just because you're only given X amount of time to get all of the state tests in. So we don't want to do it that way. We sort of have to do it that way. That's it, the end. And although this is probably a long video, hopefully you would prefer something like this to a long email. I know I would. And we have a couple of weeks until this happens, so ask questions. If you aren't sure about something, please ask. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for watching. Go Bobcats.